Yeah, you can see behind me that thousands of protesters have gathered here in front of Israel's parliament, making what was a last-ditch effort to try to stop this legislation from going through. In the end, it wasn't enough, and there was a great cry of despair, of anger, of frustration when the news reached the crowd here that this legislation to weaken Israel's Supreme Court had passed inside of the Knesset behind me. Now, some of these protesters had tears in their eyes. One woman we spoke to said she didn't know what she was going to tell her children about Israel's future as a democracy. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would say that this bill is curbing the power of unelected judges who he says are standing in the way of his government implementing the agenda that it was elected on. In the end, the vote was 64-0, with all 64 members of that right-wing religious government under Netanyahu voting for the measure, while opposition lawmakers streamed out of the chamber in opposition. But the scale of the opposition to this bill shouldn't be measured just by the protesters on the streets or the vote inside of Parliament. The business community is also speaking out against this. 150 major Israeli companies today closing their doors in protest at this legislation, and thousands of Israeli military reservists saying they will not show up for duty because they signed up to serve in the military of a democratic country, and they are no longer sure whether Israel is one or not. Prime Minister Netanyahu also, in pushing ahead with this legislation, ignoring a quite unusual last-minute plea from President Joe Biden, who put out a statement on the eve of the vote urging him and other leaders in the Israeli government not to go ahead. He said this bill is clearly dividing Israel and that they should stop, they should seek a consensus. That is not advice that Netanyahu ended up taking. And there are real questions now with this government's power, to a certain extent unchecked, what they will do with the Palestinians in the occupied West Bank in Gaza, and what it will mean for minorities in Israel, the LGBTQ community, the rights of women, and what this will mean for the future of the relationship with the United States. Back to you.